Hey all, hope you're well. So I've been getting a lot of questions around the volume of carbohydrate intake during exercise. In other words, how do I know how many calories I should be taking in per an hour during exercise in the form of carbohydrates? And I think it's a very, very good question. What works for one individual is not necessarily going to work for another. So I think it's important to understand that there's a number of factors that need to be taken into account. The first and foremost that comes to mind when I'm explaining to people how to decide what their volume of carbohydrate intake is digestive comfort. It is so vital. You cannot land up with GI distress or gastrointestinal distress during exercise. So you need to find what that level of digestive comfort is. And a simple example is somebody that's leading a low carb lifestyle and then suddenly incorporates carbohydrate feed into their exercise regime. If they're taking too much and their gut is not adapted to that carbohydrate intake, they will most likely trigger GI distress. And that's not something that you want during exercise. So it's a bit of a balancing game. We need to find what the maximum level of intake is that provides very good and stable levels of energy to that level of digestive comfort. And once you hit those two levels, you're happy with the energy levels, you're happy with your digestive comfort, perfect. Then you can bank it and you can take it to race day. So how do you get there? There's a number of things you need to do. Firstly, I always believe start low and build up high. So in other words, start with a lower amount of carbohydrate intake. If you were a very low carb eater, you might only want to start with maybe 30 grams or 40 grams per hour, maybe even less. And then what you need to do is you need to fuel yourself, and I'm not saying you need to do it every single day, especially for those that are doing a lot of faster training sessions, but you do need to test it at least once or twice a week, and you need to slowly adapt the gut to carbohydrate intake. So start low and you can build up high. So in other words, over a period of time, you can increase that carbohydrate intake. So let's say I started with 50 grams of carbs per hour. I felt great, but I felt my energy levels could have been a little bit higher. And next time I moved to 55 grams of carbohydrates per hour, and then maybe a few weeks later up to 60, 65, 70. All of a sudden at 70 grams, sure, my energy levels are great, but man, I'm feeling some digestive discomfort. I've got GI distress. So what do? I drop that carbohydrate intake back down again to where I felt those levels of comfort to good levels of energy. And that's sort of the balancing act. So remember, start low and build up high. And I call that the tipping point. The tipping point is where your energy levels are at their peak, and if you cross that boundary, you're going to cause GI distress. So that's the kind of level that you want to work to. And it doesn't mean that you can't carry on building. I mean, for example, over the years, I could only tolerate a certain amount of carbohydrates per hour. At one stage, it was 55, 56 grams per hour. I moved up to 60, 65. I'm actually at 74 at the moment. And that was just a matter of training the gut over a period of time. The other thing that I need to state is not all products are created equal. There are different types of carbohydrates in the market. You get monosaccharides, disaccharides, polysaccharides. These carbohydrates have got different kinds of molecules and chains that bond together. And some are slow releasing and some are fast releasing. So it's very important to understand the kind of product you're utilizing and how it's going to be impacted when you utilize it, how it's going to be broken down, and how it's going to provide you energy. So that's another factor that comes into play is when people start to mix a whole lot of different combinations of products together and it doesn't work for them. Why? Because a product is designed for a specific function. And by mixing it, you're not necessarily going to get that. And somebody could be taking a very fast absorbing carbohydrate and suddenly can throw very, very slow absorbing carbohydrate into the mix, and the two are going to conflict and it might not work. So I think it's very important to take note of the kind of product you're utilizing, the volume of calories that you're taking in the form of carbohydrates. It might even be in the form of protein and carbohydrates, and over what period of time. And you need to try and stick with that, practice it over and over, and see what that level of comfort is to maximum energy levels during exercise. So I'm going to finish off there. Take a look at this chart. It's just a little chart that shows you a little build up over time. And just remember, start low, build up high. And then once you have tested it over and over again, and absolutely make sure that you test it under levels of intensity that you're going to incorporate during race day. If you go and test your nutrition and you're doing zone 2, zone 3, and then in race day you're suddenly hitting levels of zone 3 to zone 5, you're actually putting your digestive system under much more stress when you're going into higher zones. So at high levels of intensity, you're going to modify what you've tried during training, especially if you've been testing your fueling in a lower zone. So you really do need to test it under levels of intensity during training. And it's like I explained to somebody the other day. If you're going out and you're doing a long distance triathlon and you want to test your race nutrition over 90 kilometers, well, you need to ride those 90 kilometers very close to race pace, if not race pace, and feel yourself to see how your system is going to respond to that level of intensity with that feed. I've seen many people over the years, they've trained what we call train low and race high. They fuel low and then they race high. They take that fuel from the low training to sort of high intensity racing, and they completely fail on race day. Why? They haven't tested it properly during training. So remember, when it comes to nutrition, don't discount it. It can make or break your race, and you do need to get it right. Work out what that value is that you need to take per an hour. Make sure that you've got digestive comfort, and then take it to race day. We'll chat again soon.